With the release of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door's remake, Intelligent Systems made some adjustments to the original game. Some of them are adjustments uniformly asked for by the community, like the warp pipe between Twilight Town and the creepy steeple, and others less so. Some fans who knew Vivian was transgender in the original Japanese version of the game were happy that the censorship on her gender was lifted in the remake, and fans who did not know that and discovered it in the remake sometimes criticize Nintendo for randomly gender swapping a character. There is one thing, however, that must have gone unnoticed by all but the most dedicated fans. Something that you could only notice if you played the game in a non-English language. In order to understand what I'm talking about, we'll have to study 4 versions of A Thousand Year Door: the original French translation, the original English translation, the remake English translation, and the remake French translation. I'm actually going to analyze the original French translation first. Why would you do that, Solarius? Well, the thing is, the Thousand Year Door translation we got in France was actually top-notch. Cream of the cream. The script contains loads of French play-on words, and the characters' names were localized, but the translation also remains true to the original substance of the text. For example, Hooktail was localized as Carbocro, but the noise she feared the most was frogs, which is the same as the Japanese version. This was changed to crickets in the English version because, I don't know, English people don't know what frogs are? Well, anyway, the point is, the original French translation is really close to the Japanese script. The dialogue that interests us here is this one, taking place in Chapter 2, when the 3 shadows introduce themselves to Mario. Their introduction translates to this. We are the Dark Trio of Sisters. Beldam then gets angry at Vivian and corrects her, saying that their name is the Dark Trio, period. She also says this. Where do you see 3 sisters? You are a boy! And this is how her trans identity is revealed. She was referenced as a boy in a few other parts of the game, but I'm focusing on this one because it's the only text that is obligatorily seen during a normal playthrough. The others are optional. Just to support my claim that this is what the original Japanese script says, here's an extract from a Japanese Let's Play. The red word here is otoko, which translates to man. If you're both nitpicky and familiar with Japanese language, you will argue that otoko here is written in katakana. Very quickly, Japanese language has 3 writing systems: kanjis, which are ideograms, which means each kanji represents a concept, hiraganas, which is an alphabet used to make words, and katakanas, which is another alphabet made specifically to transcribe the pronunciation of foreign words. So in appearance this makes little sense, right? Why would you write a Japanese word with an alphabet dedicated to foreign words? Well, I've asked a friend who has actually studied Japanese, and it's nothing to fret over. In fact, this is just the Japanese equivalent of writing in caps lock. Which wasn't really necessary since the word is already colored in red, but they really wanted to put emphasis on it. However, someone at Nintendo of America decided that Vivian being originally a boy was way too extreme for an English audience and replaced the dialogue with this version. We are the 3 Shadow Beauties. And like the original, Beldam gets angry and says that they are the 3 shadows, period. Beldam then proceeds to insult Vivian by telling her she is not a beauty because she is plug ugly. And with no other dialogue referencing Vivian as a boy, even in the optional text, one can only assume that she is just a regular female. This is, simply put, censorship. The problem that arises with the fact of making a Thousand Year Door remake is that in 2024, censoring trans characters is not in good taste anymore. Quite the contrary, in fact. Breaking the censorship on Vivian was almost unavoidable. And you would think this would be easy, right? After all, they still have the original script at hand. All they have to do is just to translate it normally and restore the original version of the script, right? After all, they restored Hooktail's weakness to frogs instead of crickets, so they just have to do the same thing with Vivian, right? Well, that's not what they did. Instead, they created a third version of the script. The scene in chapter 2 now sounds like this. We are the three Shadow Sisters. To which Beldam gets angry and corrects her, saying that they are the three shadows, period. In this version, she barely insults Vivian at all, and instead she explains that Shadow Sisters is not mysterious and scary enough. Notice how they entirely got rid of the red caps lock text that was present in every original version, even the censored one. Now, as I said, Vivian's trans identity was indeed spot back into the remake. However, it doesn't appear in this chapter at all. It only appears on chapter 4 when Vivian joins the party. Just like in the original, she offers to help an anonymous shadow in its quest to get its... This is a tongue twister. In its quest to get its name back. The shadow worries that she will get in trouble with her sisters for that, to which Vivian replies that actually she isn't sure she wants to remain by her sister's side anymore, and also she wants to repay the shadow's earlier kindness. And this is in both versions. In the remake version now, there is a brand new dialogue box added into the dialogue, where Vivian explains that it took her some time to realize that she was their sister instead of their brother, and for some reason, now that she has realized that, she feels that their bullying is heavier? That's weird, but I'll discuss it later. And I'm not going to detail the French remake of the game. All you need to know is that this time we got a translation that is much closer to the remake English script than the original Japanese one. The point right now is that, although Vivian's gender has been restored to a female-identified male, the censorship around Vivian was not lifted. Actually, they doubled down on the censorship. Vivian has effectively been censored a second time. Now, you may ask why this is a problem, or even if it is a problem at all. Well, to start with, this is censorship. I'm not entirely opposed to censorship, especially if we are talking about children's media, but I think it should be restricted to the bare minimum. And the original version of Paper Mario is actually a perfect example of why I hate censorship. Vivian was a trans character, a well-written one, in a Mario game, before the whole havoc about diversity, wokeness, representation, ESG, etc. were a thing. In my opinion, Vivian being censored in the English version of the game proves that the problem was never the lack of representation in video games. The problem was the censorship applied by publishers on the creative people. And if TTYD's remake proves one thing, it's that the censorship has not lightened. The details of what exactly is censored has changed, but the censorship is still happening. And this is a problem because, as long as censorship will happen, we will miss out on characters such as Vivian. But this isn't all there is to it. Regardless of censorship, I honestly think this new version of the script is way worse than the original French and Japanese script. Whether or not it is worse than the original English script is a poor debate. One thing I liked about the original Vivian was how natural her gender felt. It took me some time to understand why exactly she felt so natural and well integrated, and then I finally realized. See, the only person who point out that Vivian is actually a male are Beldam, her abusive sister, and an extremely rude Goomba who complains that he can't find a cute girl while rejecting any girl who isn't Goombella. Everyone else genders her correctly, including the random strangers who are meeting her for the first time. Goombella's title for Vivian, as well as her partner description, mention that she is actually male, but they still refer to her as she. So there is a pretty simple message behind it. If you point out that someone's gender is not the one they claim, then you are either making an extremely objective description of that person, or you're being extremely rude and maybe abusive. This is not the case in the new script. Beldam is still abusive towards Vivian, but she genders her correctly and she never insults her specifically for behaving like a girl. The judgmental rude Goomba also doesn't point out that she is actually male. The only time her trans identity is mentioned is when she herself talks about it and explains that her trans identity makes her sister's bullying feel heavier. And I think you can see the problem with that. the judgmental, rude stranger, and the abusive relative both have absolutely no problem with Vivian's trans identity. The only person who has a problem with Vivian's trans identity is Vivian herself. In other words, this is all about who stands out. In the original, Beldam and the Goomba are the one who stand out for pointing out Vivian's trans identity, while in the remake, Vivian is the one who stands out when she mentions her own identity. This difference makes her trans identity stand out and thus feel way less natural. Also, I think the problem with defining yourself as transgender is that, by definition, you're still defining yourself by the gender assigned at birth, which kinda defeats the entire point of having a different gender. Now, obviously, I'm not transgender, so I can't be certain of that, so I asked 3 of my friends who are transgender, and 2 of them answered that they indeed prefer to be seen as male or female, rather than a trans person. The third one gave a more nuanced answer. When communicating by text, he prefers to be seen purely as a man first, while in oral discussion he prefers to be seen as a trans person first, so that other people don't get confused by his voice. But in the case of Paper Mario, it's not like Vivian's voice is particularly masculine, is it? Because there's no voice acting in this game. And if I can go back to the content of a new text box they added, apparently being transgender makes you inherently more vulnerable to regular bullying? I'm not a psychologist, but I don't think that's how it works. You know, now that I think about it, this text box may well be a censorship of the new Japanese text that was also rewritten for this remake. I have no way of verifying that though, because I can't actually read Japanese, only decipher a few symbols, but I have my doubt about it. Well, anyway, that's the end of the video. I will discuss a few related topics in the next part, but this is not so much a detailed analysis of the game than random rambling about pop culture. One thing I'd like to add is that I've been wanting to make a video of this type for a long time, but until now I never really found an opportunity. I found many videos on the web discussing the topics of female and minority representation in popular culture, all the way from 2012 and Feminist Frequency's denunciation of female roles in video games, to the current uproar about woke content and low-quality media. And on the surface, this is a very interesting issue. For example, I have started making a video listing great female characters who inspired me in medias from before 2015. Just to prove a point that there were great female characters before 2015, and that any communication insisting that strong female protagonists are a new thing are just straight up false. I got as far as to record the audio for the video, but ultimately I gave up on it because... who am I going up against exactly? Like, the people I'm up against are, on the one side of the table, either openly racist or at least arguing in bad faith.
And you might be surprised to hear me even mention this next game, but Flight Simulator 2024 somehow managed to slip in propaganda. A woman even... We're really starting to reach peak clown world levels, aren't we?
And on the other side of the table, they are either so desperate to prove their point that they are ready to forget and insult all the great female characters that came in the past.
Captain Phasma is the first female Star Wars villain. I find it very heartening that a franchise like Star Wars, it makes it a progressive character, makes it a modern character, a new relationship with a female character, which isn't about her being sexualized. It's about us responding to the choices that she makes.
Or either arguing in bad faith too. These people won't watch my videos. They won't have anything pertinent to say about it. All they care about is generating clicks and, like, when I started researching material to illustrate this video, I found this article on medium.com, and it appeared as the first search result on both Google and Ecosia. This article is titled Paper Mario's Vivian, A Brave Step for Inclusion, and it was generated by an AI, which is evident given the very simple fact that it has blatantly wrong, like the claim that Vivian will appear in Paper Mario Origami King, and also the claim that Vivian's name before her transition was Vince, which is a pure AI hallucination. And thanks to the title, I can even tell you which AI was used to generate this article, because this pattern of putting misplaced possessive S and semicolons into titles is very recurrent in ChatGPT. So in short, as I said, this is why I waited so long to make a video on this subject. The people I'm trying to discuss are either arguing in bad faith, just to further a political agenda, or either so utterly uninterested in the subject that they'd rather have an AI write the article and not even bother changing the title. That's the level of disinterest we're talking about. Finding someone in this sphere who is unequivocally acting in good faith is a Herculean task, and with the release of 1000 Year Door Remake, I think I have found it. I have played enough of the original 1000 Year Door to know that the original game and the original censorship were done in good faith, and I think the new version of the script was also done in good faith, considering the various little improvements Intelligent System brought here and there. So that's why I decided to make this video. I have finally found a party that makes a content that I disagree with, but that I think is made in good faith. And that was worth making a video about. I still have the audio of the one about the female characters, so if someone is actually interested, I might finish it. But until then, thank you for watching this video, I hope it was informative and or made you think, and I'll say goodbye to you. Goodbye.